Moot morning, moot morning, moot morning, moot morning.
Here we are for another installment of our Moot Morning extravaganza. And I would like to introduce you to a friend and former mooter. But before I do that, let me say to everyone here on the call, Moot Morning.
Moot morning.
Good morning.
And of course, that former mooter is Mr. Gary Hillier. Gary, Moot Morning, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Ricky. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being here this morning. We also, of course, as always, we are joined by our assistant coach, Natsumi Covey. Ms. Covey, Moot Morning.
Good morning.
Gary, the reason that we're interviewing you today and taking some of your time is because I want to give a little bit of insight to some of these 2Ls that are rising 2Ls that are going to hopefully be trying out for the team. Some I think are kind of on the fence, and I would really like them to sign up and interview. And so I feel like it is helpful to hear from those that have gone through the program so that some of those concerns or fears can be set aside.
Okay.
So let me ask you first, what year did you graduate, Gary?
2018.
All right, so you've been a lawyer now for 2 years, right? You were in the program, well, let me start with how you were set up in law school. You were not on the traditional law school track, is that right?
Correct.
You were a night student.
I was.
And so when did you actually start law school?
So I started in 2014, so it took 4 years because I was on the night school track.
Okay. And so when did you actually try out for the moot court team?
Well, I think I tried out before I was actually eligible. I tried out at the end of my 1L year, but your 1L year as a night student lasts 18 months. So I tried out at the end of the school year, so I wasn't technically eligible. I think they changed the rules since then. So after 1 year, I tried out and got onto the team, and I wasn't technically allowed to compete straight away.
Right, and I think the great benefit of having night students on the team, obviously, is that potentially it gives me even more time to work with you and more time to be part of the team. And was that your experience?
I was a lifer, Ricky. I was on the team for 3 years, probably too long. But yeah, 3 years. So I got a chance to do it for 3 years, thankfully.
Yeah, and I think it was actually good that you were able to be on it for 3 years. It certainly was good for me. I enjoyed it. But what made you make that decision as a first-year night student to try out? What really motivated you to come to the interview and take the chance to be on the team?
Well, I like arguing with people first, in all walks of life, in any setting. I enjoyed the 1L competition, did okay at that, and that inspired me to look at it more. And although there were some time constraints and, we've all got limited time available, I looked at how much time commitment it would be, and I wanted to try out. And it was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah, and I think that is always the concern. I mean, and it's a legitimate concern, obviously, because of all of the things that law students are involved in, especially when you compound that with the fact that night students generally are working during the day. And so it makes it even a little more complicated to figure out the time issues. Even though that was a concern, were there things that you were told, or did you just decide that, you would try out and see how that time commitment would work out for you, or what kind of made you feel better about that whole issue?
Well, I think as a night student, it's not necessarily adverse to your schedule because the practice is at night. So I could come after you were flexible. I would come and practice after my last class. although that meant going home late, I was going home late anyway. The main issue, not problem, is the practice you have to do in your own time. And I enjoyed it enough to make it worthwhile. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, absolutely the best thing I ever did. Not just because you're awesome, Ricky, which you are, which you deny, but it trains you. It trains you in many different ways. It trains, if you don't have that work ethic or that spark, it teaches you what you need, how far you have to push yourself to be prepared for something, whether that is a hearing or a moot court competition. We would practice as if it were real, and that's why we would tear it up in competitions, I believe.
Yeah, I agree with that, Gary. I mean, it's, even though it's called moot court, I think every one of those rounds was real. It felt real. You were competing against folks that wanted to win those rounds just as badly as you did, and you had judges that were evaluating everything you were doing. And so, when you talk about, I guess the only difference is you didn't have the concern of a client, whether you won or lost, which is kind of a nice benefit to have, to be able to practice some of those skills without having that concern.
Yeah.
Gary, you talked about just some of those skills that you learned. One of the questions that I often get is this idea that moot court is really more geared toward the appellate practitioner, that if you're going to be in the courtroom, if you're going to be a litigator, really, maybe one of the other programs is better suited and will get you in a better position to be prepared and be successful. Do you have any thoughts about that? What do you think about those skills that you gained in moot court, and did they translate? Because you're obviously a litigator. You've been on both sides, both prosecution and defense of criminal cases. Where do you kind of fit those skills into what you do now?
Essential, and I use them every day. Yeah, you're right. I guess people could say, well, you should do mock trial because you're going to be doing more trial work. Are you really going to be doing a lot of appellate stuff? I wish I were. But given an argument in front of a judge, which is what you do most of the time, I can't remember how many trials I've done, but you do arguments in front of judges a lot more than you do in front of a jury. And even then, given an argument in front of a jury, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, being able to stand there, hold your ground, think, answer questions, give a reasoned argument, and respond to questions. And I think that I would disagree entirely. I think that, yes, maybe mock trial gives you repetition at cross, direct, and objections and stuff like that. But moot gives you the ability to stand still. Excuse me. Sorry about that. The phone was ringing. Stand still and present an argument under pressure. Because, that make no doubt about it, you're under pressure when a judge is giving you some pushback. And being able to do that from several competitions with you guys, it trains you how to do it. On day one as an attorney in front of a court, I thought, thank you, Ricky. Now I know why you say to stand still, not just because of the competitions, but, I can plant myself, and you see opposing counsel not being able to do that. And you can fake it till you make it. You can trick the court because you might be fighting like underneath the water, but above it, you're like a serene duck floating on the surface because you picked up those skills. And I don't think you would get those from any of the other competitions or teams available at the school.
I think that's a great point, Gary. And I think a couple of the other mooters have kind of talked about this idea that it creates this kind of calm confidence and this comfort when you do go into the courtroom. Is that kind of what you've been able to experience? Obviously, it's stressful to be in court, period, but that it gives you a little bit of a sense that things are going to be okay because you've already, what to do when you stand up and talk and think and that sort of thing.
Well, yes, and going on from our first point, your question about other programs, okay, so they might have a point. Maybe you could do more reps with whatever competition it is or whatever team it is. But when the time comes, Ricky, and it's your turn to stand up and it's real, and you do have someone sitting next to you representing the state or someone that you're defending, it's the same feeling. It's the same feeling as sitting there with a pair of you because you prepared to do it properly. I can take that back to my former life. I was a trainer. Anyway, in a former life, I would train adults in a professional capacity to say you train hard, and then when you do it for real, it's just like training. Well, I know, I've been telling you. So the first time you have to stand up and give an argument, whatever it is, the blow is so much softened by, well, hold on a minute, I've done this hundreds of times in front of Ricky in the library. It can't be any worse than that. So it helped. I can't overestimate or underestimate how much it's helped me.
Now, Simi, do you have any questions for Gary?
Yeah, just because, the whole night student aspect, I think, is really important to a lot of people, because I do think a lot of people have the mindset of like, oh, I can't do something extra outside of school, or I can't manage to do it. But I do think a unique aspect of Moot Court is how flexible our schedule is and how much of it is on your own time. So I wanted to ask what those practices look like for you, like what building an argument look like for you personally before a competition.
Can I answer that, but just add something before that I wish I'd said? So I was a night student, and for any night students out there thinking, I was working full time, and I just had twins. They were, when I first started school, 5 months old.
Oh my goodness.
So it couldn't get much worse than that. If you want to do it, you can do it. So the practice is you sign up on whatever it's Blackboard or whatever it's called. There's a thing that goes around. I could never work it, but I would always choose to go last after my classes, and the schedule is flexible at the weekends for practice. Again, poor Ricky will go there at 8 o'clock at night on the Sunday to meet you if the library's open to practice, and you fit that around your other commitments and your reading for class. And I found it enjoyable, and with the benefit of hindsight, like I keep saying, it was without a doubt possibly one of the best things I've ever done in my life, let alone I ever did at school. It was the most useful thing I did at law school. It was nice to be able to pass the bar, granted, because that was key to be able to do it for real. So that, not taking anything away from that, but you have to have good academics to be in the team. So, there's that anyway. It goes hand in hand with it, but it is the most transferable skill on day one that I use every day. I think about Ricky every day of my life at work. Sometimes it's not good for us.
Gary, that's high praise. And I appreciate those words a great deal, probably more than you know, especially coming from you. Having you on the team was a joy, and you were the consummate team player, and you came out of Moot Court a champion, which is always my goal for every one of the students. And I was so proud of you for the hard work that you put in. And I love the fact that Mooters are willing to continue to give back and to come and do things like this. And so thank you for your time today. Thank you for agreeing to this interview. And it was great to see you. Moot morning.
Good morning.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Gary.
Take care.
Thanks, Ricky.